and welcome to Africa Defines podcast. I'm Amber Massey, your host and editor of Africa Defined. So, for about 10 years, my perspective about Africa has changed through research and conversation, and I believe that connecting the African diaspora with the African continent is a must for the survival of our culture and identity. So in today's podcast, I wanted to talk about Wakanda, which is the fictional African nation featured in the Black Panther film, Black Panther. It's where Black Panther is from. And I wanted to talk about a real kingdom, maybe that doesn't parallel completely with Wakanda, but, is definitely a connection there with Wakanda. So I guess the idea of it kind of came to me, looking at Facebook and everything. And I was looking at how and reading about how people were saying things like, hey, I want to move to Wakanda, which everybody knows is fictional, but because the nation, the way it was established and the way basically everything was run within this nation, really in the Black community created this sense of, man, that would be like the most perfect place to go. So it seems like a lot of Black Americans have developed, or I guess unearthed, if you will, a sense of pride resembling our ancestral home. You have to understand we don't get a lot of visual images like this. So and stories really from anywhere, not from movies or anywhere. You have to know where to look as far as in the library, things like that. But more specifically in film, we began with, of course, stereotypical roles for Blacks. We have definitely progressed to where we don't have so many stereotypical roles anymore, which is pretty cool. So like, for example, like The Pursuit of Happiness that features Will Smith. It's basically a movie that does not... it does have to have a Black character because he is portraying a real life person who is Black. But just within itself, just seeing movies about prominent Blacks or successful Blacks in their own right is still relatively new. Another example would have to be perhaps John Q, maybe by Denzel Washington. And those are still movies where you have, a lot of whites still in the movie or made the movie. Whereas Black Panther, the entire cast, I think, except for maybe a couple of actors, the directors, the producers, were all Black. So this is just kind of a really big deal in one respect as to why Black Americans specifically are so excited about this film. So recently I was watching an interview, Trevor Noah's interview of Lupita Nyong'o, and forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that right, but he asked her, one of the things he asked her was, why was it important that in the movie Black Panther, the actress's hair were not straight. And if you've seen the movie, all of the actresses, have natural hair, which, of course, for Blacks is curly to some degree, varying degrees. But it was really cool. It was more about her answer that was really cool to me. She said that Wakanda had never been colonized, meaning that it had never been colonized by whites. So therefore, the look of straight hair had first of all not been introduced, and then it was. She also said that the people of Wakanda had found their own definition of beauty, and I thought that was really cool because their perception, whether it be in body paint or in scarification or in different hairstyles, things that you put in your hair, just any of those things, the way people dressed, all of that was just based off of what they thought was pretty, what they thought was good, what maybe even functional. And we don't really have that concept here in America as blacks. We have always had the influence of whites in this country. And, it's just something factual, nothing to get mad at, but, that is what it is. But at the same time, it's very difficult for blacks to kind of have their own identity. So, we've gone through a lot of different stages with what we want to be called, how we want to wear our hair, the things that we want to wear. All kinds of things. We're having to pull our own, and we have created our own identity here, which I don't think should be unnoticed or not considered to be black, because we definitely have done that. But I think it's always good to understand that blacks were stripped of our natural culture, whatever culture that was, whatever tribe we came from. It's, that we don't have that identity, so we've had to make our own. So, in light of the Black Panther film, I also thought it might be cool to look at an actual Wakanda. So now, Wakanda doesn't really exist, of course, nor is it really parallel to any one African kingdom. But there are aspects of Wakanda that I think were taken from a number of kingdoms, like from the East, from the West, and from Southern Africa. So, I kind of chose to concentrate on the aspects that the Wakanda developed superior or technological advances. So in my mind, the first kingdom that came to my head was the Kingdom of Zimbabwe. Because I thought it was a great example of an ancient kingdom that was renowned for their advances. So, roughly, the kingdom was established in the early 11th century by an ancient Shona culture, and who came up from southern Africa. And the capital of the kingdom was called Great Zimbabwe, and it spanned almost 1,800 acres. And people believe that it housed up to about 18,000 people. So, the most impressive thing about Great Zimbabwe were its walls. They were constructed with stone, but no mortar was used. Now, this is a concept that even today has never been done successfully. So you're talking about these huge walls, some of which were up to like 5 meters high. They were only stone, no mortar was used, and a lot of these walls, it's in ruins now in Zimbabwe, but you can still see some of these most impressive walls. It is now considered, or it's deemed, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So, it's really, really impressive when you start looking at that. The ruins actually form three distinct architectural groups, and archaeologists feel that these complexes represent the work of successive kings. So, you had this complex like being built from like the 11th century on through the 15th century. So for quite some time, this was a formidable kingdom in what is now Zimbabwe. So, also based off of archaeological evidence, we can see that the Kingdom of Zimbabwe controlled the ivory and gold trade from the interior of the continent to the southeastern coast. So, an abundant amount of Asian and Arabic goods have been found in Great Zimbabwe, which shows that the kingdom was really instrumental in regional and global trade. So it can be very eye-opening to understand that a place such as Wakanda may not be as fictional as we think. And something that I forgot to add, probably one of the most important aspects of Great Zimbabwe is when Europeans started coming into the country. And I think the late 1500s were some of the first accounts that explorers wrote about seeing Great Zimbabwe. But when colonizers actually came in, they actually thought that the Shona people never really built this great complex. They thought whites had come in and built it actually. And they actually told European historians and anybody who would basically listen and who were writing accounts of these African travels. They told them that the Africans really did not build these. So thanks for listening to Africa Defined. Check out my YouTube channel for more information about African countries, and look forward to seeing you all again.